Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Mitchell Ringos. Nipissing OPP continue to investigate a tragic incident at Wolf River Falls near Dorian last weekend. Two people were swept over the falls while attempting to cross the rapids. One person was pronounced dead at the scene while the other was airlifted to hospital with serious injuries. The fatal incident occurred at around 6 p.m. on Canada Day. Nipissing OPP were called about two people being swept down the rapids on the Wolf River and plummeting over the falls. When officers arrived on scene, they found one person unharmed at the top of the falls and two victims at the bottom. 25-year-old Pooja VS of Thunder Bay was pronounced dead on scene, while the other person was airlifted to hospital by Orange Air Ambulance with life-threatening injuries. Staff Sergeant David Moskal explains how this tragic incident unfolded.
Our understanding is that one of the individuals was operating a drone and the drone had landed in the trees. They were trying to retrieve that drone and had formed kind of a daisy chain to get across the river. I presume that they underestimated the speed of the river and weren't able to successfully navigate that stretch of water.
Moskal says the arriving first responders did an incredible job in this unfortunate incident due to the rough terrain in the area, cold waters, and heavy rapids. The rescue efforts were a real challenge as they had to move the victims over 500 meters to a safe area to be worked on by paramedics, and then the high-angle team had to work on a 80-degree slope to get them out of the area around the falls. Moskal says area waterways are moving a lot quicker than residents are used to seeing, so caution needs to be top of mind.
Every year we lose people in drownings and in water incidents. And we'd just like to remind the public to use caution, to think before they act, and to have a clear understanding of what they're trying to achieve and is the cost associated with it worth it.
And at the moment, there is no information about the condition of the second victim who was brought to hospital. A coroner's examination of the deceased is scheduled to take place in Thunder Bay. Police in Kenora have arrested a city resident in connection to a series of fires, one of which destroyed a downtown restaurant late last month. OPP began receiving calls about fires shortly after midnight on June 28th, with the most prominent one breaking out at around 2 o'clock that morning at the Hungry Pug in the city's downtown. Fire crews worked tirelessly to save the building, but the restaurant and the apartments above it were lost. Fortunately, no one was injured, and officials with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office and the OPP conducted a joint investigation. And now 43-year-old Kyle Leahy of Kenora has been arrested and faces a number of charges.
There was a number of charges. Again, not all of them involved fires. So we did have 3 counts of arson, damaged property. There is 1 count of arson, disregard for human life. 1 count of uttering threats cause death or bodily harm, and 3 counts of mischief that this male is charged with.
Some area residents are still in shock as they walk by the wreckage of the building, which served as a meeting place and hub for decades. And a Greenstone man was airlifted to hospital in Thunder Bay with life-threatening injuries following an ATV accident at a camp near Geraldton on Monday night. OPP are investigating the incident and confirmed that the rider was not wearing a helmet at the time. Police are reminding the public to use caution and follow all safety laws when operating any off-road vehicle. In Red Lake's Margaret Koshner Hospital has narrowly avoided closing its ER for the second time this year, but if nothing changes, there could be many more closures yet to come as doctor shortages continue to strain local resources. Back in March, 2 patients had to be taken to Dryden when the Red Lake ER closed for 24 hours. CEO Sue Lebeau says they were very lucky that it wasn't worse, and the hospital had announced on Tuesday that the ER would be closing again on Thursday night. A doctor came forward to keep the ER open, but Lee Lebeau says they will have to close their obstetrics unit until August 2nd unless more doctors come forward. As for the ER, she expects to face several full-day closures towards the end of July and overnight closures for as much as 50% of August.
It's very concerning. You know, we're talking about not being able potentially to provide care to our neighbors, to our friends, to the people we see in the grocery store and on the street, and to people that matter to us. They're in our neighborhood, they're in our community. They do so much for each other, and we want to do the same for them.
LeBeau says the shortage of doctors here is in part a ripple effect of the shortage in southern Ontario, as doctors who might have taken shifts as locum doctors here are now able to take shifts closer to home instead. She's calling for creative solutions to get more doctors working in the province quickly. In the meantime, she says the hospitals in the region are working to alleviate the situation. She thanks the physicians who have been scrambling to help. Meanwhile, it's a similar situation in the Kenora area as the Lake of the Woods District Hospital is warning the public about likely ER closures over the summer months. The hospital is working to prevent that from happening, but officials say if their emergency room does close, there could be impacts on other hospitals in the region. There are serious questions around the availability of locum doctors, and there could also be issues with flight cancellations and possible missed work due to COVID. Hospital CEO Ray Reset says there is just too much uncertainty to predict if and when the Kenora ER might close, but he says there are currently over 40 shifts not covered in August. In July, most of the 30 uncovered shifts were staffed by local doctors. Reset calls their efforts heroic.
And they're just going above and beyond to keep our services going, keep Emerge open. They're such a committed group, and but they're already making a lot of personal sacrifices to do this as well, giving up on vacations, working shifts that probably are beyond anything that anybody should ever be asked to do.
The next closest hospitals are in Dryden and Winnipeg. Agreements are in place with Winnipeg to transfer patients across the border. Barrett says it's not easy for a smaller hospital like Dryden, which is also facing staffing challenges, to handle patients from Kenora. Brissett is calling for increased compensation for doctors, a fast-tracking process for licensing of out-of-province physicians, and a policy prioritizing sending locums to Northern Ontario. And it isn't over yet. That is the overall assessment for flooding in the Northwest, specifically for the communities on Lake of the Woods, which remains above the 2014 flood levels and is still wreaking havoc upon those living around the lake. Officials are asking those who are enjoying their normal summer lake life to be conscious of others. Adam Riley has the latest.
Water levels have crested in Kenora. However, it's still causing issues for residents and businesses in low-lying areas of the city. Sadly, for some who prior to the flooding had beautiful properties with water access, have now lost ground literally, turning once vibrant backyards into sandbagged war zones. A further issue being compounded is the wake created by passing boats, who, seeing fewer water hazards, are not watching their speed, causing waves to crash over barricades into yards. Kenora OPP Constable Jason Canfield is asking boaters to be aware.
Let's just put some care for each other and help each other out just by going slow. I mean, if you're in the boat, there's way worse places you could be. Take your time and just get to the place and look after each other.
Canfield says if residents are concerned that boaters are going too fast, to try to get the registration number of the boat and report it to the OPP, noting that detachment has been busy as of late, but is trying to get more marine patrols out on the water, which Canfield says he does conduct and admits he is in awe of the water levels.
I know I was on Lawrence's Creek yesterday, and I was surprised because I hadn't actually been there, and I was surprised how many people's basement doors were literally within a foot of where the water is. They all had sandbags and stuff, so all it would take is a boat going at a medium pace to breach that wall and go right into people's basements.
Officials with Kenora Fire and Emergency Services say water levels have started to drop, but not significantly enough to affect inland areas of the city, which sit at lake level, especially if a high wind kicks in, which could increase or decrease those levels.
The water seems to vary between 6 and 8 inches. Right now, there's 2 areas of concern within the city. One's on Highway 17 in front of Dingwall Ford. There's still some water that's encroaching on the road. And then West Point, there's probably about 5 inches of water over the road, and our safety thing is 6 inches. Everything else is either receded or we've built up the roads and they're passable.
In the July 6th update by the Lake of the Woods Control Board, which monitors lake levels, the agency says water levels dropped by a centimeter over the past week and sits at 324.10 meters. Not enough to break the record of 324.31 meters set 72 years ago this month. As well, the report indicates all the dams in Kenora remain fully open and no additional actions can be taken to limit lake level rise. TBT News requested an interview with a member of the Lake of the Woods Control Board, but the request was turned down. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Now, flooding does appear to be under control in the eastern areas of the Kenora district, including the municipality of Sioux Lookout, which has started to get back to normal. Now the focus is being placed on the what-ifs of the future, as in what if this happens again? We head back to Adam Riley with the details.
After an unprecedented spring and early summer flood in Sioux Lookout, things are finally starting to return to normal. Mayor Doug Lawrence says water levels have receded, but not enough to get a full survey of the damage.
But I think the cleanup has also started. The water has dropped 3 feet from its high, and believe it or not, it's still too high for many floating docks to go back in.
Lawrence believes another drop of about 12 inches should be enough for residents, lodge owners, and other organizations to put their floating docks in for the year. While photos and videos taken weeks ago and the water stains on boathouses show how much the water rose, it's images from now that show the lengths the municipality went to protecting residents and infrastructure. The most obvious being on Lakeshore Drive, where the town raised the roadway 4 feet above what it was, as well as work on Wellington Street, which after truck traffic was rerouted due to the closure of the bypass, caused the storm sewer system to fail. Lawrence says, however, there is still more work to be done.
We've done some temporary work. There'll be more deeper work that'll have to be done there at some point later in the summer and fall. And MTO, we're petitioning them to raise the bypass or seriously consider that for a possibility of a future event. So the bypass doesn't have to be closed because of what we hope is abnormal high water, but if it becomes the norm, then the roads will need to be higher.
Lots of damage can also be seen at the Sunset Suites hotel complex after water crossed the highway onto the property. Work is now taking place inside the buildings to repair water damage. As a result of the flooding and the impacts it had on residents, town officials met with affected neighborhoods to get their thoughts on the situation, which those in attendance Monday were from the upper section of Lakeshore, who expressed appreciation for the efforts the municipality undertook to protect the roadway.
I thought the meeting was very well done. It's fairly small, a dozen people or so. The discussion centered on roads. Now, it's been a very narrow road forever. It's a dead-end road. It used to have a circular drive, but CN closed the crossing, so there's no way in or out except from the beginning where the road comes on.
During the meeting, Manager of Public Works and Infrastructure Jeff Hawley told residents the municipality will try to work with CN regarding the crossing. As well, they will be removing some of the fill used to raise the roadway during the flooding, and will look at trying to widen the roadway on both the upper and lower ends of Lakeshore. Adam Riley, TBT News.
When we come back, we'll have details on the purchase of Resolute Forest products and its assets here in the region.